Okay, welcome back everybody. There's still lots of people chatting outside, but we said we would start at 2:30, and 2:30 we shall start at. So welcome back, and this is the last session of the day, bringing the conference to a close. We've got 3 presentations. Each of them are focusing on different aspects of resilience. Now, last year was the driest on record. It was part of a series of 3 particularly dry summers that we experienced over the last 5 years. And then, of course, it was followed by a 1 in 10 winter event. And with our experience of Beasts from the East, many of you will remember that, we do need to better understand what's going on and see particularly the impact on leakage. So we start this afternoon with Tim Fairwell, Director of Maple Sky, and Richard Fielding, who's a smart water leakage technical lead at Anglian. And they're going to share how climate change will impact our networks and their findings from modelling the relationship between soil, weather and bursts. So welcome to Tim and Richard.
Wonderful, thank you guys. Okay, we're going to be looking at how we model the impacts of climate change on infrastructure. First thing, if you only remember one thing today, it's that the present is no longer equivalent to what went on in the past, and the future certainly is not. Things are changing. The way we are regulated is changing. The climate is changing. So we can't just keep going, what happened in the past? That's what's going to happen in the future. Second thing, water is awesome. Yay. Well done for being here. Guys, what you're doing is super important. Water is essential for life. And as Mark was saying, when Cape Town ran out of water, it was what people were talking about all the time. So what you were doing is essential for peace and security. All right, 2022, that was fun, wasn't it? My goodness, you were in the news all the time, and it wasn't great news. People didn't like you. So how do we go about building these models? When we're looking at modeling climate impact, the first and the most awful part of the process is gathering data together. And then we clean it. And we look and we try and identify patterns that go on and on again, so environmental impact patterns. Once we've got a sense of how the world is breaking our pipes, we build more complicated models to predict asset performance. And then we drop in future climate data to go, okay, well, that's what's coming in the future. How will they respond? So first of all, we look for patterns. We look at how the weather impacts on the soil and how the soil impacts on the pipes and breaks things. And then you have local things like trees, which are even more problematic for particular pipe materials. So we gather data on all these different factors and mush it together and try and get a pattern. And this probably looks quite familiar to many of you, where you have a winter failure. So this peak here in the middle, that's not working. Okay, we've got a winter peak and then summer peak in terms of burst pipes, and the same probably for leakage. But what we can do is segment the pipe network by different pipe materials. So you'll see iron in the middle at the top. It fails a lot in the wintertime. And we also have other materials like AC, which is increasingly deteriorating across much of the country, and PVC with that, these peaks in the summer months. Okay, so different materials have different failure profiles. When we look at things like temperature, so hot temperatures, cold temperatures, 2 main pipe materials, they have very different responses to these temperatures. So iron fails a lot in the wintertime, and AC fails a lot in the summertime when it's hot and when it's dry. And this is important to bear in mind as we go and look at future climates, because what you're going to see is the way that your pipe network responds to the world is going to be changing. Okay, short break. This is a video I made with my kids in lockdown, and we're looking here at 3 dry soil samples, and we add water to them, and the simulated pipes, they will move up and down. So sandy loam, it's really boring. It doesn't do anything at all. But look at the clay loam here. Can you see it kind of grow as it absorbs the water? Now imagine that's your pipe, and it's straddling across a number of different soil types. That differential movement is going to lead to cracking, to joint dislocation, and so on. So in reverse, in the summertime, this is what happens. You can see it start to shrink and move down. So when Peter was saying that hot and dry summer led to more failures, this is what the mechanism is. It's this differential movement of soils acting on your pipes, breaking things, causing leakage. Okay, we'll move on. So one question we asked is, can the soil shrink? And when it is, when it's a shrinkable clay soil, you can see these cracks appearing, and they can last quite late into the year. And there's my wife's foot in a hole. Okay, so we've got here, there's so many soil types in the UK. There's about 1,000 different soil types. Really exciting stuff for 1 or 2 people. Let's categorize them into 6 types instead. So we've got very low shrinkable soils like sands, up to peats and alluvium, and clay is somewhere around here. So this is just showing 5 because for this area there wasn't much of the class 5. And you can see that in terms of failure rate, bursts per 1,000 kilometers a year, it's these peats, these alluvial, and the clay soils where you have the high failure rate. Now this is over a long term. So this is between 2012 and 2021. Let's put in 22, so a really hot, dry summer when we had the 40-degree temperatures. And look what's happened. Oh my goodness. These peats, the clay soils, the failure rate there has absolutely jumped up. And now 22 is going to become normal. We will see that. So where you have vulnerable pipes in aggressive soils, it's a problem. All right, so here we are. We're looking at 2 graphs. Let's look at this one first. This is the failure rate. Pipes fail a lot in the cold temperatures and also the hot temperatures, but at the moment it's driven primarily by cold. And this is soil moisture deficits, how dry the soils are. And again, this is Anglian's data. Their pipes fail a lot in those really dry periods as well. We can segment this up by different material types and see these patterns repeating that we've already spoken about. Iron failing in the winter, in these cold temperatures, and AC more in the summer. Now, we've also looked, so a lot of this is Anglian focused, but similar patterns happen in completely different parts of the country. So the Welsh Water, I've been doing some work with them as well, and they've kindly shared some of their data too. And here what we're looking at is the relationship between temperature in Wales, which is not known for being hot or dry, and also soil moisture deficit. And exactly the same patterns are found where you're looking at AC pipes there. When it's hot, when it's dry, the failure rates increase. Okay. So soil moisture deficit. When soil moisture deficit is high, that means the soils are dry. And you look at the different regions. This is just England, but I know some of you from Northern Ireland, very wet. Wales, very wet. Scotland, oh my goodness. But what's going to be happening across the whole of the UK, all of these profiles are shifting upwards. The soils across the whole of the UK are going to be getting hotter and drier. So even regions which are not known for being hot and dry, these conditions are coming your way. Again, here's Wales, not known for hot and dry, but when it is, they get a lot more failures, a lot more pipe breaking. So how do we go about mapping this effectively? We look at soils and we categorize it, take those 1,000 soil types and smush it into about 6 classes in this case, sometimes a bit more. We identify which parts of the country are actually susceptible to soil movement. Then we can manipulate the data and categorize pipes according to that. But just to summarize these trends, really simple stuff. Iron pipes, they fail in the winter. AC pipes fail most in the summer, especially where the soils are shrinkable. And PVC seems to be failing, well, particularly depending on the type of PVC, but the weaker PVC seems to be failing more when you have these really hot conditions. Okay, so once we kind of got those physical principles established, we then look at data, and we look at rainfall data or temperature data, soil moisture deficit acting on the soil to predict the number of bursts that you would experience given these conditions. And we've been doing this for a number of years, and we can do this for different pipe material types to identify, for example, iron failing in the winter and AC in the summer. Once we've got a model like that you trust, you go, yeah, that's basically the right pattern. Then what we do is we take out the weather data that's actually measured there, and we put in some simulated or future weather data about future climates. And earlier we were talking about uncertainty, and it is a little bit uncertain at the moment what climate change is going to deliver to us. And a lot of that is in our hands. So we've got 4 different scenarios. RCP 2.6 is when we all take climate change seriously and we adjust the way we travel and the way we eat and what we buy and how we vote, blah, blah, blah. And the red line at the top, 8.5, is we carry on completely as we are, and yeah, it all goes to pot. So in reality, we're probably going to end up somewhere between those two, probably around 4 or 6. But also those pathways, they go through time. It's not a sudden thing. Climate change is already happening. We're already seeing that. But we build these models and we look for a number of different time slices to the end of the century. What's this weather going to do? How is this going to impact us? You know, we said climate change is already happening. If this is just temperature, you can see a tiny blushing, getting warmer over the last 100 years. This is 1890s to 2010. Under these 4 different scenarios, you know, under all of them, you see the summer temperature is really so much hotter and so much drier than it has been to date. So 4 things to bear in mind about climate change. Summers are hotter and drier. Winters are warmer and wetter. Extreme weather events like the beast from the east, like temperature, the heat waves, these become more common and the sea level will rise inconsistently around the coast. We've already seen some extreme weather, you know, summers like 2011, 18, 22. These were, you know, increasingly hot and dry summers. But what we're seeing with the climate models, in terms of soil moisture deficit, this green line is, you know, the average summer in future. And what that is basically saying 2022 will become the average, the normal summer by the end of the century if we carry on as we are. So it no longer will be an extreme weather event. So do you remember the graph we saw right at the start where we saw the number of bursts in the winter being like that big spike? Effectively what we're seeing as we go from, you know, now, which is the blue line, to the future, is the shift between most of the bursts happening in the wintertime and most happening in the summertime. And you know, this is from the first bit of climate modeling that we did with Anglian, and I was like, oh my goodness, that is so big, I'm not sure I believe that. And then we had one 2018 we'd seen, which is that's 2018, and 22 came along, and we're already at the, you know, almost 1,000 bursts in 1 month. Insane. So, you know, we can look at the uncertainty in these models, but the trend is important, and the trend is, as we've seen, more bursts in the summer. Again, through time, if you just look at the number of bursts that we're expecting throughout the year, it might be pretty consistent for the first couple of years. It might even go down, because, you know, if we don't have cold weather events, you know, you're not going to see those winter bursts. But the real problem is that we're getting that accumulation of bursts in the summertime when water is scarce. So just to summarize, winter bursts, these will be decreasing, but what we've seen is when you have a long period of time between cold weather winters, you know, let's say you have 5 or 10 years, when you do have a cold winter, you've kind of built up a population of pipes which are ready to fail, and they just need a tiny little snap of cold weather and they will go, which leads to a beast from the east kind of event. So when they occur, it's going to be an issue. Summer bursts, yes, AC, PVC, iron bursts, all going to become more common in the future, and especially where we have these highly shrinkable soils. Okay? And of course, when are you using water the most? Probably in the summertime, particularly for those detached houses like we saw in the Thames area, right? So, you know, just think the PR issues where you have hosepipe bans and people walk out and they see water running down the road. It's not going to be very fun. Okay, so what can we do? We can look at areas, we can look at regions, DMAs, and so on, where you have these shrinkable soils, these vulnerable pipes, and identify these areas which are underperforming now. Then we can zoom in and we go, okay, well, which of the assets? You know, we've got a tiny pot of money to spend on investing and remediating and improving these assets. Where do we target that? So we look at assets, and Rich is going to deal with this in a lot more detail. But, you know, we can segment up the network and go, right, if you got a little money, put it in these assets, or monitor these ones, so we can spend that money as wisely as possible. And finally, I guess just a kind of personal call to action. I would love you all to just like write down one thing that you've learned today and go away and do something differently as a result of it. You know, climate change is coming. It's going to get worse, but we have time to do something about it now. We know industry-wide investments aren't yet enough, so I think there's a wider regulatory piece that we need to, as an industry, work together on to convince regulators that we need to do more. But models can help target the right areas. Okay, yeah, you are part of this process, so identify the risks that are coming to you. Start by looking at what has happened and use that as a guide for the future. But engage in conversations in your own businesses about this because it's such an important topic. You can talk to me about it if you want to. There's my QR code there. But yeah, I'm going to hand over to Rich now from Anglian because he can talk you through what you're doing practically in the industry to make use of models like this. Is that all right?
Thanks, Tim. Afternoon, everyone. So my name is Rich Fielding. I'm a technical lead in the Smart Water team at Anglian Water, and I've been working with Tim to really try and tailor the outputs of all the things you've seen into something that's actionable for us and something that we can use to improve performance and ultimately drive benefit. Okay, so a little bit about why that's important to us. So we have a high proportion of highly shrinkable soils. Particularly the sort of area, the sort of bluey purpley colour there, type 6 soils that Tim was talking around the fens and the wash area. The Met Office graphics there kind of show the hottest day on record from 2022, very centred around our region, so we're amongst the hottest and driest in the UK as well. And we also have a lot of AC pipes, over 7,000 kilometres of AC pipes, which we really struggle with in the summer, particularly in those high shrink swell soil areas. And that's why Tim's work really resonated with us. He was able to kind of put some science and data behind the things that we were seeing. And the challenge, I guess, for our work since then has been how can we sort of shift that? How can we look proactively? How can we use that kind of insight to say where's going to hurt us in the future, not just understand what's happened in the past? Okay, don't need to dwell on this too much for people in this room, but clearly burst mains and pipe failure, there's very little things that we have control over that impact so many of our ODIs. And the way that we perform and the way that we kind of work around burst mains and pipe failure is really at the heart of what we do as a business, our purpose, what we do and our values. How we work around this is central to what we're about as a business. Okay, so how does all of that come together? So as ever with a lot of the technologies in the smart space, really leverage the most benefit when you can layer those with complementary pieces of technology or insight or projects, and that's what we've done over time with Tim. So there's many pieces of the puzzle, of which the Whisper work and the work with Tim and Maple Sky kind of fit in that first box, the likelihood of failure. So we now, through Tim's work, have a pipe level likelihood of failure for all of our pipes, optimised for different climatic conditions going forward 50, 60 years into the future. And how we've layered that is we've layered that in with the consequence of failure. So again, at pipe level across the whole of the region, what's the consequence of failure from an interruption to supply, low pressure, discoloration, flooding, pollutions, and leakage as well perspective. And then we start to layer in some other complementary projects around condition assessment. So we use the work that Tim's done on cohort definition, so pipes of similar physical characteristics, and we start to layer in the condition assessment work that we've done and start to extrapolate that out across the region, start to understand which pipes are underperforming, overperforming, which pipes potentially are going to hurt us in the future, even if they're not hurting us at this moment in time. And then coming into some areas where we've got further exploration to do, but around root cause analysis, so really starting to understand the modes and mechanisms of failure, and again applying that to the structure that Tim's built the models around, so we can start to understand the types of interventions that are going to be most suitable for reducing that risk and limiting our exposure to pipe failure in the future. And then the final bit, maybe the most important bit, part of this product that we want to bring together and suite of different pieces of work is the bit that brings it together, the optimization. How do we start to optioneer around the different types of interventions that we're going to apply? Where do we carry out pressure management? Where do we carry out relining? Where do we carry out replacement? Is something we want to bring all together as a package And we think there's huge value in bringing that together and visualising that, which I'll come on to in the next slide. And a couple of screenshots there from a proof of concept that we're sort of halfway through with Optomatics and their Asset Advanced tool, which does exactly that, brings all of these areas together. Okay, so the way that we're utilising this, and it's very much a work in progress. This is certainly not BAU across any of these at the moment. This is something we're working towards, kind of split into two areas, tactical and strategic. The tactical being around enhanced response. So the first one, these highly critical areas of pipe that we're able to identify, optimise our sensor deployment, so where are our permanent acoustic hydrophone sensors and the type of analysis we carry out with those, optimising those specifically around some of the bits we spoke about or we heard about earlier this morning around capturing leaks before catastrophic failure, really optimising those sensors, not just for primarily leakage benefit, but also for that interruption to supply and some of those other drivers as well. So trying to accelerate repair, response planning as well. Another good example of aligning across projects, so having off-the-shelf mitigation plans, so we know optimal rezones and recharges for, unfortunately, inevitably these pipes that we know are highly likely to fail. Resource planning, where we know we're going to have areas of high bursts in certain regions, making sure we have the right tankers in place, we've got the right standby rotors in place, that we've got coverage. Maybe one a bit less tangible, but democratised data. We really feel by having this data available, whether it's the individual components, condition assessment, root cause analysis, or the insight generated from all those together, for anybody in the business in their daily decision making, we think there's real benefit in that, and not having this data kind of squirreled away in data scientists' kind of tables and databases. And then into the strategic utilisations. This is all around prevention, and really is kind of at the heart of where I want to drive this work towards, is around aligning our capital investment to improve outcomes. So having a trusted, central, data-driven approach to where we carry out that capital investment, understanding what types of solutions are best for which scenario. And then finally, we're taking this stuff really seriously. So we plan to replace circa 6,000 kilometres of our most climate vulnerable mains up to 2060, starting in the next AMP. So we have a huge job ahead of us, and this kind of data is going to become absolutely essential to ensuring that we prioritise those pipes, and we have a really sort of well-defined approach to how we prioritise and select those pipes. That's it for me. Yeah, I said very whistle-stop tour, and it was, but this is very much a work in progress, so really open to collaboration with other water companies, all the suppliers in the room. If you're on similar journeys or you think you've got tools or services that could help us in this journey, be really pleased to hear from you. And that's all for me.
Yeah, don't go anywhere. I love this stuff. And as you were saying, in our business plan, actually the one that's just gone in, we put in just under 700 kilometres, haven't we, the first phase of that replacement. And the big challenge that we always get from our economic regulator around this place is, in terms of mains replacement, is fantastic. You're only replacing fractions of a percent as an industry. We need more. Yeah, okay, got that. Where are you going to go then? Where are you going to start? How do you demonstrate the case? And some of this work has absolutely pointed us, for the first time in a long time, at actually where we do start. But right, let's take any questions from the audience first of all. Alex.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. Both Tim and Rich. Tim, you talked about the soil swelling in certain soil types and had that nice Lego demo, which was really neat. What are your thoughts around the failure mechanism in terms of temperature that you're seeing between different pipes? Well, between the two, and do we understand that well enough? Is there more to be done there? We've seen the correlation. Do we understand what's really going on?
So there's probably someone in the room here who can answer the question better than I can. What I have seen, just from a data science perspective, is that when you have a high soil moisture deficit and then a high extreme temperature peak, that does lead to more failures. Now, obviously, depending on the material that we're talking about, whether it's AC and joint failure, whether it's actually ground movement leading to circumferential fracture on an iron pipe, I think those are better understood. I think the PVC one, for me, is the most interesting. So if anyone else, if anyone else knows what is leading to the PVC failure, whether it's a demand pressure issue, there will be better people. Do you want to speak to that?
I think from my opinion, I think there is lots to learn still around temperature and hydraulics as well, particularly during the summer. We definitely see that correlation in uptake of burst mains for sure, but do we really fully understand what's ground movement, what's seriously different demand patterns are in play at that time? Do we really understand that in enough detail? Probably not yet, so definitely areas to explore.
Okay. Let's pick up a question from Slido. How much leakage do we estimate will be saved from the 6,000 kilometre mains replacement?
Great question.
It's
I can't answer.
It's a good question that deserves a good answer. But,
whether it's going to get one or not, I'm not sure. I mean, one thing that is, a real challenge that we do have is understanding leakage at a pipe level. We know that's really challenging. That's something that we've got on the roadmap as part of the consequence factors. Can we really do that robustly? No, honestly, at the moment, and something that we need to focus on. There will be some estimations in the business plan, I know, and I can't quote them, unfortunately, but that's as good as an answer I've got, I'm afraid.
I've got another one here. If the 2022 summer becomes the norm, what type of winter will become the norm?
Oh, great question. So we still will get the occasional kind of white Christmassy winter, but I think it's more, these wet, drizzly winters, which pipes love. We hate them, but pipes really love boring weather when it doesn't get below freezing. So the pipes are going to be happy even if Christmas cards look a bit kind of more grey and drizzly. So grey and drizzly is where we're heading.
Sort of like today, really.
Yeah.
Lovely. That's a positive thing.
Yeah.
That's a good lead off with. Okay, any other questions from the audience? Front row. The PhDs are in.
That's good.
Yeah, this could be yours.
Cheers. Thank you for the really interesting presentation. I noticed you mentioned trees at the start of the presentation in terms of, I guess, their effect on the soil. I was wondering if you'd kind of, in looking at the data or kind of from practical kind of field experience, noticed any effects of kind of these like really localized impacts on how the soil behaves, or is it quite easy to just sort of treat pipes within a certain type of soil as a kind of homogeneous group that are going to behave in the same way?
So that's really interesting. Bonus slides! If you can there's 3 that I hid, which are green near the back.
Tim had 55 slides, and he had to cut them down.
So yes, trees. Trees are super complex. If we think soil is complex, trees are perhaps even more so. But we did some rudimentary analysis where we're looking at, effectively we took Blue Sky's national tree map and mapped, whether a pipe was in the canopy cover of a tree, and looked at the rate of failure of different pipe materials, when it was in a close proximity to tree and not, and whether or not we can find those slides. Yeah, hid near the end. Effectively, what we're going to see is similar to. Do you remember the slides we saw right at the start? Look at that. Okay, so here are the trees that we mapped, and then these are the bursts. And this is where the bursts actually were, so they weren't on the pipe. So we snapped them to the pipe. Whether or not they fell within the tree canopy. Next slide, please. And next one. Okay, so when we look across the whole area, we see that actually trees, slightly higher failure rate when the pipes are underneath them. Next slide, please. Now this is, again, similar soil types where, it's 8 in this case, but these are your shrinkable clay soils. So you see when it's within or a very close proximity to the tree, and the soil is shrinkable, you get this high failure rate. But on the sandier soils or those boring clay sandy loams, the trees don't really seem to be increasing the failure rate. This is just early research, but and what's really even more interesting is then we look at like the tree height and we find it's the teenage trees, so the ones that are really eating a lot, which seem to break the pipes more. There you go. Is that kind of answer your question?
That's really fascinating to see. Thank you.
There's also correlations with wind as well. I've not worked on this, but there has been research done that shows correlations between bursts and wind and tree coverage as well. So as those roots are being impacted, getting more pipe failure. We haven't worked on that, but interesting area.
More to do.
Got some more Slidos in here. So are we taking into account rapid swings in weather stroke temperatures we sometimes see over 12 to 48 hours as opposed to drier, wetter winters and hotter, drier summers?
Okay, so not in terms of the climate modeling. We do know that pipes don't like extreme changes, so whether it's a temperature or a pressure swing, they don't like that. The climate models that we were looking at there were just like monthly averages, so not these really high frequency events. So no, those haven't been captured in there, but we know they will be more problematic.
Yeah, something that we want to do more on is understanding if there's particular subsections of pipes that are generally at risk, but there's certain sort of cohorts that are more at risk to those sorts of phenomena, something we haven't teased out yet, but yeah, an interesting one to get more dynamic, a bit more granular.
We've got some questions in here coming about, I guess, all related to pipe materials and that we're putting in at the moment, and how, what should we be thinking about at this moment in time in terms of pipe materials based on what we've found from your work? There's a couple of questions that kind of link to that.
Well, I mean, we certainly see PE obviously performing at the highest level of all the materials, quite clearly. We heard some bits about some of the things that are fallible with PE for sure, but we aren't seeing any evidence from what probably because there's not really much data out there. We don't really get that many bursts considering the amount of kilometres we have of PE, but we're not seeing that as being an issue really, are we, with climate-related issues in the data anyway?
No, we're absolutely not. And I think this is where you have material scientists and people who are probably better placed to forecast some of these risks and look for things that we don't even see coming. But from a data science perspective, PE is performing really, really well. And I guess I would hand over to a material scientist or a health scientist to look at maybe hidden risks that we don't see coming. Because they might be there. I just don't know what they are.
Okay, right. Well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Excellent. A round of applause. Absolutely fascinating stuff. So now you're going to hear about how SES's water smart network, their IDMA, is helping to achieve smart resilience. So please welcome Tanya Daddy and Daniel Woodworth, co-founders and directors of Dayworth Consulting. It's an imaginative name, that one, isn't it? Both Tanya and Daniel, as many of you will recognise, were formerly with SES Water, and now they're presenting on SES's behalf, I believe. Is that right? Yes, excellent. So over to you two. Thank you.
So yeah, thanks very much for the introduction. Really, really tough presentation to follow, so thanks for that as well. Yeah. My name's Tanya Dady, this is Daniel Woodworth. We're going to be presenting today a case study from SES Water on smart resilience. SES Water, we're a small water-only company in the south. I think most people think that's Jez is the only person that worked for SES. There's plenty of others. I can vouch for it, I've seen them. Having said that, myself and Daniel have now moved away from SES and we are now Dayworth. However, we're maintaining a strategic partnership with SES and we'll continue to deliver some of their projects. So just to clear that up, that's why we're here today. So I'm going to start with a question, if you don't mind. And it's going to require some audience participation. I know I've got a room full of industry experts. I'd like you to tell me, shout out the answers please, which of these two horizontal lines is the longest? The answer is? They're the same. I love it. You guys are so clever. Perfect. So why do we think they're the same? Because they played this trick on us at school, right? To teach you parallax. They tell you it's your perception that makes you think that bottom line is longer. It's not. It's not. They're the same. Yeah? And you guys carried that answer around with you in your heads for the next 10, 20, 30 years, just waiting for the day that someone asked you which line was longest. And you all couldn't wait to jump up and say, it's the same, it's the same. Guess what? It's not, because I changed it. Yeah. Now, I think last night's dinner speaker set this up really well for us, but did you know that half of the human workforce is due to be replaced by software and robots in the next 20 years? It's pretty scary, isn't it? But us as humans, we get things wrong. We sometimes do. We carry around bias in our heads based on previous life experiences, just like when I asked you which line was the longest, and everyone couldn't wait to say they were the same. The truth is, machines are more efficient, and they can digest insanely large amounts of data, and they can help us do really, really meaningful things with that data. So is there a place for AI and machine learning in the water sector? Absolutely. We'll share a little bit today about how SES Water are embracing that to get really smart with resilience. So I'll hand over to Daniel.
Okay, thanks, Tanya. So I've now got a few slides on weather and climate, which I think Tim has just put far more eloquently than I will, so apologies if we're covering some of the same ground here. But you can't talk about resilience in this country without talking about weather, and we are British after all, so we've got to talk about the weather. So I was thinking, well, you know, what is the perfect weather? And funny enough, the word came up in the last presentation, drizzle. Drizzle is the perfect weather for water networks and for leakage. So I thought I'd put the definition up there. What is drizzle? The key point is it's kind of, it's rain, but it's not too heavy rain. It's the perfect type of rain. It keeps the soil moist. But there's one thing missing from that definition of drizzle, and that's that it's the perfect weather for leakage managers. We love it, right? And the reason I know it's the perfect weather is because I've been in this industry now in leakage for 12 years, and I still get excited if I'm on holiday abroad and I check BBC weather back home and it's drizzling, and that's great for me. Or if I'm on holiday in the UK and I wake up and it's raining, and I turn to my wife and say, "It's okay, this is perfect weather for leakage." That's a real family favourite, that one. But the point is, and I'm not going to dwell on this because we've heard it in numerous presentations over the last 2 days, but we had a really, really intense weather period in the 2022-23 report year. And as we've already said, the summer in particular was very, very challenging. And what did we see? So here's a graph from SES. So we're talking about this relationship between soil moisture deficit and burst outbreak. So, there's this kind of magic number of 100 millimetres soil moisture deficit. And you can see when we plot weekly burst count against that, there's a very, very strong relationship between the two. But what's quite noticeable is that, we used to only get this breach maybe once an AMP, twice an AMP potentially. But at SES Water of late, in this AMP, it's already happened 3 times. So this is becoming more normal, exactly as Tim said. And that obviously has an impact on leakage. So this is minimum night flow for SES Water, and you can see there a very strong signal coming through into the minimum night flow, which is obviously caused by the bursts and the outbreak of leakage during that period. So we got through summer, did okay. But then we got to winter, and that December, particularly the 19th, was very, very challenging. We had a blocking system, a cold air mass over the UK, not dissimilar to the one that we actually had last week, but obviously that wasn't as intense. And this is very unfavourable conditions for water mains, particularly iron ones, and we saw a freeze-thaw cycle kick in. And the key thing about that was the intensity of it. So temperatures dropped very quickly, they stayed low for a number of days, and then shot up on the 19th. Real big swing, and those events are becoming more common. That kind of rapid cold followed by a rapid thaw. So if we take that through to look at the signal we get on the minimum night flows, it's a similar, although more pronounced story, in that you get the signal coming through. The difference being we get that very, very sharp spike, which we know to be customer side leakage, as we saw on some presentations yesterday. So what does all this mean for us as an industry? And we're going to get a bit of participation going again here. So I'm going to do a hands up, and I want you to give me a hands up first if your water company, and this can be the one you work for or the one where you live, if they met their burst target in the 22-23 report year. So can I see a show of hands from the room, please? Oh my goodness. Right, okay, I know that one company isn't here then. Because there was one company that met their burst target. Is that acceptable? Really? Can we look at ourselves as an industry and say that's acceptable? Okay, let's move on. Water quality then, hands up. Hands up whose company met their water quality target. All right, there's a few. Yeah, there's a smattering of, right, okay, yep. That's probably reflective. So three companies met that target. Again, we happy with that? Is that showing us to be resilient? Let's look at supply interruptions. Hands up if your company met their supply interruptions target during that year. This isn't meant to name and shame, by the way, so don't, just trying to prove a point. Again, not many, right? So there's a few more. There's four companies met in that period. And the final one, leakage. Go on, hands up for leakage. Again, yeah, it should be about 50%, but we're obviously underrepresented by the ones that passed. Really, I mean, we should look at that and think, yes, it was an exceptional year, but is that kind of level of performance acceptable? Is that giving the customers what they deserve? Is that showing us to be resilient? I'm not so sure. And the media certainly don't think it is, and as a result, our customers don't think we are as well. So, we are getting hammered at the moment, as others have made this point, and I think it's time that we do something about it. So,
back to me. So SES have been high performers in leakage for a number of years, for a very long time, which meant that SES had to do something a bit differently in this current AMP period. So SES went quite early and took the jump into a smart network. It's a project known as IDMA. I'm sure loads of you have heard about it before. I'm just going to skim over it for those that haven't. Grab the clicker. Thank you. So IDMA involved upgrading all of the sensors on our network to NB-IoT. And the reason for that is that you need near real-time data to feed into any sort of clever machine learning AI. It needs very, very granular, near real-time data to be able to use a useful event management tool. So first of all, we changed all of our sensors. We shifted from getting 15-minute average data to get it coming in once an hour to getting 1 minute data coming in every 15 minutes. And the power of that has been incredible. If we just did that on its own, it would have been really, really useful in this winter event. But then you overlay that with an artificial intelligence platform that has the ability to display it, visualize it. It learns the predictive profiles for all of your flow and pressure sensors on the network, and then it's able to predict 48 hours into the future and tell you about what's going to happen. In its simplest terms, this is what you see on a graph. You've got your sort of mustard yellow line, and that's your measurement line. So this is the 1 minute data coming into us every 15 minutes. Then you have your prediction line, the green line. And if that prediction line and the measurement line track nice and closely like they do there, it means you've got a good prediction. So you want to see them nice and tight. And that's based on all of the learned profiles, looking at historic data for that DMA based on the machine learning that happens. And then the third line on that graph, the blue line, is the limit line. Quite simply put, if the measurement line breaches that limit line, you're going to get an alert. Those limit lines are really dynamic, so they can be closer to the measurement line at night time when you can be more sure of it being a leak. And then during the daytime when there's more noise on the network, they can be quite dynamic and move away. So that is how IDMA works in its simplest term.
Okay, so there we were. March 2022, we went live with IDMA. And a lot of work had gone into that point to train the system, and we got it to a point where it was really working well. On an average day, we get 4, maybe 5 alerts for things that we need to go and look at on our network. Very, very manageable. This is the situation during the summer outbreak period. So it was a 50-day period that we measured across, and over that period there was a 40% increase. So again, it's manageable. And because I know, when people speak to me about the smart network, they always say, yeah, but surely you just get inundated with alarms and you can't cope with it. In the summer period, we could. We were able to cope with it, and it was, it was really good to be able to triage the events we were getting. More about that a bit later. So let's turn our attention to the winter period now, because this was a completely different story. So, gone from 4 potential alarms or alarms coming through per day for potential events up to about 60, and that really wasn't manageable. So there's a 500% increase in alarms coming through the system at that point. But we didn't give up. We could have at that point said, this isn't working, this isn't going to help us. We stuck with it. And I'll show you, hopefully I'll show you how we managed to do that. So again, this is an average day. So this is kind of our company area. The blue is showing you working sensors, and the red is where there's a sensor that's in alarm. So that's a very manageable picture. Our 24-hour control room can deal with that. They can dispatch field staff out to that if they need to. This is the 19th of December. This looks like we created the corporate Christmas card, you know, with all the red on there. And you know, as I say, that's not manageable. But we persevered, and because behind that graphic are these data tables. So not only is this system prioritizing alarms for you, it's categorizing them into critical, high, medium alarms. It's also giving you an anomaly size. So straight away you can start to triage and kind of pick out the ones that you may want to go and look at first. Now what we did as well, we were bringing other sources of data in at this point, things like, you know, reservoir levels and customer information about reported leaks and things to make those informed decisions. But never before had we had this holistic view of what was happening in our network to be able to do this kind of triaging. So I think, you know, reflecting on this was really important for us. When we put the smart network together, we didn't then think we were going to get one of the worst summers followed by one of the worst winters. So we thought, okay, well, let's sit down and let's really have a look at what this all meant for us. I'm going to bring Tanya back in on this now, because Tanya was heavily involved in the management of that event. And Tanya, you know, tell us what was different about that event compared to how we've managed events in the past.
Yeah. So you guys will know, you set up your incident room and everyone's running around. Everyone wants to help, everyone wants to get involved, and everyone traditionally has their roles. You know, the field guys do the field work and the managers come and manage and get a little bit panicked. But this was the first time there was real calm in the room. And actually, right at the very start, they pulled us in and they pulled our team in and said, what can IDMA do for us here? How can we use this system to help us manage this whole incident? You know, this is bad. You know, there are alarms everywhere. We know there are leaks everywhere. How do we make this work? And it's the first time, because we were like almost a year in with the smart network, everyone had bought into it. Everyone knew how it worked. Everyone trusted it. And the first time we sort of had a go at it, you know, used it in anger in a leakage event, and it was put into the room as the main tool for decision making.
Thanks, Tanya. And there were a couple of examples, weren't there, where it really came into its own. Can you tell us about one of those?
Yeah, for example, so because we have this really granular data now, we have this 1 minute flow data coming in every 15 minutes, we're able to tell whether, you know, if a DMA has jumped up, traditionally you look at the night lines and you see a DMA's up, there's leakage in there. There was leakage everywhere, we know that. But because we've got this granular data, we know whether there's a number of small jumps that could have been CSLs that all sort of trickle over at different times, or whether there was like 1 or 2 catastrophic events. And what happened, we had our production manager call into the incident room and said, we're starting to lose one of our reservoirs, Mark Beach Res. It's very, very small reservoir, feeds only 4 DMAs, but we were starting to see that drop and they weren't able to meet the demand in there. So they said, you need to get leakage guys there straight away because we're going to lose the res. So we had a look at it, we had a look at the data, and we could see, do you know what, this isn't a couple of massive bursts, this isn't a catastrophic event. There's a few CSLs in there, because you can see that it jumped up on a few different occasions. So instead of sending our highly skilled leakage teams and all of their equipment and taking them away from areas that they were needed, we sent meter readers. And they went and they found the customer side leakage, they isolated them, we got the res back in action. It was a really good example of just being better with what you've got. Yeah, and Daniel, I know that you were incident controller for quite a lot of that period as well. Is there any learnings that you can sort of share from that about how we deployed field resource?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one for me is that you know, anyone who's done incident controlling knows you're under pressure to get immediate results, and I think there is a real tendency to revert to type during that period and revert to what you know. And I was being asked, you know, anybody who can drive a van and can go out in the field must go and find leaks. And I was like, no, we mustn't do that. We need the data. Because at the same time when you're in a winter event, as you'll know, you do lose a certain number of your sensors as well. So we made the strategic decision that we were going to ring fence those people to go and maintain the data, because it was that data that was giving us the eyes on the ground so that we could make these really key decisions and keep the areas in supply. So that was probably the key learning I took from that.
So a few stats here, just to say, do you know what? Let's trust the process, trust the data. IDMA, and we'll stand up here and admit, we weren't able to stay on top of alarms in that winter event in real time. You know, we were prioritising, we were triaging. But when we went back and did some post-analysis, we were really proud to see that IDMA alarmed to every single significant leak. So everything you want to know about, it told us about. So it performed very well. And that second point, I think, is quite important as well. There were a very small number of false alarms. Yeah? So over 90% of the alarms were genuine alarms that we wanted to know about. And that's fascinating because this model has not learned on a crazy winter event. It learned on normal data in the periods running up to it. And it performed so well, it adapted to this winter scenario, and it gave us 90+% of genuine alarms. I think one other point I'd pick up on there is the customer impact, or lack of customer impact, I guess. Because while some neighbouring companies were losing tens of thousands of customers for days at a time, at SES we lost 46 customers for just over 3 hours, and that was because a repair ran a little bit longer than it should have. We didn't lose customers, we didn't have to deploy alternative water. We had all of our resources working on the things that they should have been working on. So I think IDMA has been well and truly tested in 2022. It was a tough summer and a very tough winter, but it's a system that is robust and something that we can use again in the future. It's going to be better next time because it's seen a winter event already.
So just to kind of draw all this together really, you know, and reflect further, did IDMA single-handedly make SES water resilient during these events? No, of course it didn't. But did it help SES respond in a resilient way to those events? Absolutely. But, you know, let's be honest, having near real-time response to events isn't really where we want to be. That's the last line of defence, isn't it? What we want to be is more proactive. And that's where, you know, I've been so encouraged over the last couple of days in the presentations I've heard where companies are really starting to take seriously the link between leakage and asset management. And you know, some of these things that we should be doing more on the prevent side, so that we don't get ourselves into that situation to that point where we're having to react in that way. It's going to have to be a combination of both, of course, but it's great to hear that there's work out there to bring the prevent side more to the forefront. And I encourage asset management teams to work more closely with leakage management teams because they're going to have to work together in the future. So a couple of things, you know, from my perspective that we need to be doing as a sector, as an industry, being more data-led in everything we do. You've seen the power in the case study we've given here of just having that data available and acting on those decisions. And then doing something with that data. You know, it's all well and good just having the data, but having it presented in a way, and that's my call to all you suppliers and out there, you know, help us manage that data in a better way and produce nice graphics so that our operational staff can use that data.
Yeah, I think there's one more piece to add to that is the people and process part of it, because you can't just buy a smart network off the shelf and expect it to work. It takes a lot of change in the business, and you have to bring everyone along on that journey with you. And actually, the people and processes that go around IDMA are so important, and it took us such a long time to embed within SES. It took a long time to win over hearts and minds, so that we were in a position when the winter event came that people trusted IDMA. So I guess that brings us back to these two lines and where we started. You know, in a time when we're being hammered in the press, the whole water sector is getting really, really bad publicity. I think we need to step back a little bit and reflect and say, do you know what? We have been doing an all right job. We do a good job. We try our best. We've used our smarts and we've used all of our hard work and effort to get us to where we are, to keep the water flowing. But sometimes we as humans, we're not perfect. And sometimes we have bias and we have experiences from previous life experiences that we bring into things, and we don't always see the right answer. So I think we need to now start embracing technology, software, robots, every little platform that's out there, all of the cool stuff that's already there Let's not pretend that the tech's not there. The tech is there. We need to start using it and do that people and process part around it. So thank you very much. Cheers.
Right, I think we've got time for a couple of questions, so I'll just throw it out to you in the audience. Any questions from the audience? I've got one that's come in here. Have you found noticeable reductions in battery life of sensors recording and uploading the data at the required frequency? How's that for a technical one?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. Actually, the shift to NB-IoT, if anyone doesn't know, that's narrowband Internet of Things, means that, well, it's narrowband, so like broadband, where you use your internet can send really large files, narrowband will send very small files very frequently and without compromising battery life. So for the same 5-year battery life, we used to get that 15-minute data coming in every hour. We now get 1 minute data coming in every 15 minutes for the same 5-year battery life. So there's no compromise.
Cool. Okay.
Hi, Dean Marshall from Artesia. I was actually going to ask a question about that. So you're getting data back every 15 minutes now, and you're getting 1 minute resolution. Which of those two is more important, do you think?
Both.
Yeah,
yeah, and it's probably the obvious answer, but it really is both. You know, if you sort of take away the AI element, you know, which is obviously important, but just having the granularity of data to be able to you know, understand what's going on at any given time in your network. So that's the 15-minute piece. But the AI really needs the 1 minute data in order to learn. So that therefore both are important.
A couple of questions I think we can combine. Do SES have any plans to take IDMA further? And there's a question about, is it scalable to a bigger water company? So.
Yeah. Well, I'll take the first one. You can take the second one if that's right. So first part, yes, absolutely. SES are not going to just rest with what we've already got. The next step is, you know, so at the moment we can get put into a DMA within an area. You've got 1,000 properties there, go and find the leak. The next step for us is leak localization. And what we're trialing at the moment and had some very good success with is micro pressure variation. So using 4 to 7 pressure sensors dotted around your DMA to help localize the leak. So that's the next step for IDMA, and then perhaps using acoustic sensors in the areas that the pressure sensors don't work.
In terms of the scalable, yes, I believe it is. I mean, everything you know, is scalable if you've got the correct resources, the correct people, the correct processes to do it. And I think, you know, that we learnt a lot through going through that process. But I think if a larger organisation were to do that, they'd hopefully have the budget. They'd have the staff available to build the system, to train the system, and then the training package that goes out with it to all the operational teams would need to be at a larger scale, obviously, than what we did at SES Water. But yes, as we've hopefully shown you, it can give you a manageable number of alarms, but you need to put the work in to get it to that point.
Super. Right, thank you very much. I think there's a very good point made in the presentation about thinking about the processes and the people, and it's come up a lot on the thought wall. So thank you for those of you who've been putting stickies on there. We will be reflecting on those, but thinking about the people, the investment in the people change is a really important part of all of this. It isn't just about technology. So now I'd like to welcome Jenny Wright, Strategy and Transformation Consultant at Jacobs, and Matt Hughes, Smart Systems Strategy Manager at Anglian. And Jenny and Matt are going to update us on the significant industry-wide project, Safe Smart Systems. And this is one of these projects which has got funding from Ofwat's Innovation Fund from a range of water companies. They're also going to get us thinking a bit about the future and the potential of AI for supporting resilience and leakage management. So thank you.
I'll wait here.
Say again?
I'll wait here.
Come on. Good afternoon. So I'm Matt Hughes. I am the Smart Systems Strategy Manager at Anglian Water, and I'm going to really follow on nicely from what you've said, and even the guys before, because yeah, this world really links in well. So it's almost like we planned it, but genuinely didn't. So we're going to talk about Safe Smart Systems. I believe you had a little bit on this maybe 2 conferences ago, I think it was, when it was really at a concept stage. So We're going to cover a bit more on it today, a bit more on the detail on what it is, progress on the project to date, what we're developing, and then a little bit about how it's changing our thinking about what's going to happen in the world around us. So Safe Smart Systems, as Peter mentioned, was a project that was put forward back in 2021 as part of the Ofwat Innovation Fund Water Breakthrough Challenge. At the time, it was the biggest project, about £9 million, so quite significant overall. And it was put forward on the point of thinking very much about the future, because the challenge around the Breakthrough Challenge was what could be done that was innovative, and that transformation will really make things different for resilience and for customers in the long term. And that's what this project was about. It was about, if we take the things we can do now and we put something else to it, do more and more and more, how can we think about what life will be like in 10, 15, 20 years in the future and change it. So the Safe Smart System project was born, a number of companies came together, and it kind of visualised the idea of a source of tap system that thinks for itself, that adapts on its own, and that people can have a completely different relationship with in terms of managing those assets or how they operate. So who was involved? I mean, most of the industry by the looks of it when you look at that slide, but Anglian Water obviously put the bid forward at the time, consulted with all of our partners you can see on the screen there, and we've got an appointed team from Jacobs, which is where Jen is from, and introduce herself in a short while, who are helping us lead this project overall. But it isn't about Anglian and Jacobs, it is very much about all those people you can see on the board, how we collaborate, how we draw in ideas. You know, even just the last two presentations were brilliant, because if we didn't have those people up on the board there, this thing would not be a success. So collaboration's at the heart of what we do. So to start with anything of this scale and this magnitude, I'd start for a vision for the future and then what we're going to do about it. And the vision, to keep it really simple, was how we think about how we build that smart network of the future, how we're going to operate it, how it's going to be connected and deliver the things we need to. So it's quite a simple concept in many ways, but it just prompts a lot of things when you start scratching the surface of what that means. So Safe Smart System itself has got a very specific part, because we're only working in a small part of Anglian Water's region, very small, to test what we can do here. So I'm not going to read the mission, you can all read it, it's all there, but I'll draw your eyes to the bits in bold because they're really important. So what we want to do is develop something and evidence something that actually we know is scalable and adoptable by all companies in the water industry. That's really important. It can't just be about what Anglian Water does. It has to create a roadmap for the future. So when, like I say, 20 years in the future maybe. And then capability and culture to operate. Keywords I'll pull out, and Tanya, it was really nice you kind of mentioned that as well, because that's the big difference when we think about things like AI and what's going to happen. It is going to change how we do things, how we operate. So we'll come back to that in a bit overall. And then, once again, validated by the industry and making sure we're demonstrating value and getting those benefits along the way. So what is it? I kind of talked around this high-level concept of what it is, and you can kind of break it down into some component parts of the things we're focusing on. AI decision engine, big buzzword at the minute, but it's here and it's changing what we do. Astronomical changes in the last 12 months in just what ChatGPT brought around to us. We have to think differently about the AI. So at the heart of what we're doing is a systems-based AI decision engine. So you think about what we just talked about. This now starts bringing in other elements of things we can think about and make decisions on, that also then leads us into the principle for autonomous control within that network. And we all have automation, but this is now something that can think for itself, predict the future, adapt before it's ready, which then means we need to think about next generation of infrastructure. So MBIoT is one example. We're talking about edge devices as well being rolled out on our sites, because that allows us to bring data in more frequently at different volumes. We can do more with it. We can process at the edge. We can do much more with it overall. So we have to think about next generation infrastructure. But there's also the virtual infrastructure and how we organise around that, how we keep cyber secure, what we do with our OT versus our IT, and how we separate those things out. So that leads us into the bottom section of things. We need different standards about how we do this. A large part of the project is about, and one of the earliest things we delivered was around cybersecurity and what that means for us and how we make sure we're safe when we do it. Have to start from that place, because if we don't, we're going to come unstuck at the first hurdle. So cybersecurity was put from our partners at Airbus, helped us deliver that part of it overall. Got to talk about the industry standards. There's probably no industry standard around AI in particular for this. I know people are working on it. We can talk to Microsoft, who are one of our partners, and they're setting some things out for us as well. But that's going to be part of what we have as well. And then the final bit, the water information management landscape, is how we're going to organise and manage that data, which is, you can see, and it's been mentioned loads of times already, it's going to be critical to this project and how it works. If all of those things align, if we don't manage it, it's all going to fall apart, right? So we're going to have to do that. Very quick whistle-stop tour of those components, but actually you can see there's one thing that wraps around it, come back to it again, new ways of working. It creates a dilemma for us that says, actually, do our people do the same things? Do our teams do the same things? Is it the same teams? Is it people? I don't know. So it prompts a lot of questions for us we need to think about, but also a tremendous amount of opportunities. Outcomes and benefits. So once again, I'm not going to read anything on the slide here. Clearly, top left-hand corner, reduce leakage and water losses. If we get this right, if we manage our network in the appropriate way, there's some basic principles of things that are going to happen. A low pressure, low energy network would be the utopia. That's what we all want. Low leakage, low cost. That's going to stand out for us. Benefits to the wider industry. I keep coming back to the learning. Big part of what we do is sharing. We encourage everyone today. We've got a slide right at the very end with our project email, project site, connect with us on LinkedIn. Really keen to get this sharing working across everyone, because we're only going to develop what we need for the industry if we get the right level of engagement. So please make sure you stay in touch. But it's there to think about how we all change differently, and that's not just within the water companies, but across the supply chain as well. Because if we can organise our data slightly different and how we operate things, actually we can then have a bit more of a unified view for the supply chain about what it is that we want from them to provide to us. So that's something else that fits within it as well. And then clearly, although there's a challenge to our people in terms of, well, is AI going to take my job? I don't know, bits of some jobs, maybe somewhere along the line, who knows? We don't know yet, do we? It can do certain things and free people up. Certainly going to make our lives that bit better in many ways, but there's definitely some ethical considerations we have to come back to on that. In terms of the project timeline and where we're at, so it kicked off February last year, some mobilisation, and then we had to do a big phase of initial research to understand what this was. So you can imagine quite a big project with quite a large reach of things we're trying to achieve. We had to delve into the detail of what that is, identify the right use cases we were going to cover. And I can't underline enough just how important that was to make sure we were focusing in the right areas right now. Definitely a key learning we've had. We're now in the first phases of development. We're now starting to think about how does this all fit together? How do we bring in the sorts of tools that would have been talked about and what that means? And actually how that's going to impact across the board. So we're just starting in a very small place of what this is going to look like. And then as we get into December and beyond, into next year, we'll move into our next phase and we'll start developing in earnest something quite big, and there'll be a lot to share. And that's really where we're going to need the input of our partners and everyone around us. So what is that first development? And we mentioned a few times actually, systems the really important bit, the systems thinking bit. So you take the last example, actually, really, really nice example. You kind of mentioned there's other things to think about as part of that decision making, isn't there? And that's where we're trying to get to now. So we can start from this position of the normal state for the network is what we want to be, but actually we want to be able to think about the different decisions we might want to make on top of that, not just in a maybe an incident mode, but in a day-to-day mode or a long-term planning mode. So that's what we're trying to organise now, is how do we start from that first little bit and identify the different strategies we need to make different decisions, or that decision engine will make for us. So what that will lead us to do is understand how we then need to set up our network to be resilient to those changes around us. So how does it maintain the lowest leakage for us, but then adapt before we even know about it, before our customers even know about it, to something that might be going on to provide that levels of resilience. So everything we're doing is thinking about that at a system level and leading us to autonomous deployment. And we're not there yet. This is first shoots, definitely first shoots of what we're trying to do to make this work. But we have to do that to build on top of. And the 4 points down the side are very much those first things that we're aiming for. So the ability to detect events, that's the first thing we're talking about, not just within the network, but any other events we might see across the board. Can we predict probable events? The ability to know what will happen if those events occur, and then how do we resolve it? So that all has to fit together somehow. And and our solution architect would shoot me because that's not a great boxes with lines that the solution architect always comes up with, but it kind of demonstrates how things are going to start fitting together. So we're working down here at the minute, the actual trigger, and understanding how our decision engine is going to think about all of those blue bits to the side of it, all the different things we need to think about, all the different strategies that we might be employing at any one time, or combination thereof. That's kind of how it's going to fit together. So all of those things are going to be thinking about what's our current situation we need to be managing for. That's what it's about. Decision engine is going to make some decisions around that and help us get there based on whatever our business objectives are at that time. And then a little bit around on the side of it, simple words, scenario library, but then is kind of the what do you do about it? So that can be either something that's autonomous, something that's learned, whatever it needs to be, but it's the combination of balancing up all of those blue boxes versus what we're actually going to physically do. And then that moves off into the real world. That's when we start actually adapting and doing things. And because it's machine learning, it has to feed that back so the decision engine knows what's successful or what wasn't. So it's still a bit conceptual at this stage, but this is actually what's being worked on right now, how all these things are going to be fitting together. So very, very early days, but as you can see, it prompts a lot of questions, also a lot of opportunities in terms of how we organise around this to manage our networks differently. From a leakage perspective, you're going to have an adaptive network. Things aren't necessarily going to be static in the way that most people would like it. How are you going to measure that? So it's going to create new challenges for us.
Okay, it's my turn.
You're going to come in. So yeah, we've got a model for delivery of the projects, and there was 3 things that kind of stood out to us, which I'll let you take over and talk about.
Thank you, Matt. So it's all right having the data and the tech and the solution that's going to be plunked in front of people, right? Brilliant. It's going to do stuff. You need the next generation infrastructure to allow that to happen. We've already mentioned that. But the bit where I come in, and the bit where I'm really excited about, is the operational environment. How are we going to change what we do with people? Shocking, people do stuff, right? How are we going to change the way that people operate with this thing that we're going to shove in front of them and make them work with? And it all has data. All of these things have people in them. They all have aspects of tech, digital, and asset, but I really want to focus now on the people side of things, if that's all right, given that you're people, yeah? You do stuff. What's the next one? So, I have created a theory of change. I am the transformation lead for Safe Smart Systems, by the way. I'm not a techie person, I'm not a data person, but I do know people. And I know that you can't just give them something to use that you haven't taken them on the journey with you. So my bit is all around the so what. What will this thing that we are going to give to people enable? Where will it take us? So we took people on a journey, Jez, you were there, into 2050, and we understood that's the climate that we're operating in. People are having water wars, things are not right. How does a water company have to operate? What needs to happen? This isn't 2050, this is perhaps maybe 10 years, the impact at the top, we're hoping. And you can see up there, reduce leakage. And we're just down here at the bottom doing stuff. But we also have to change processes, we have to change the way that people do stuff and the tech that they use it with. So we are introducing a tool which will alert the user of a potential I2S event based on an outlier pressure and flow data. Woohoo, that sounds awesome, right? But then what will that allow? What will that enable? The next one, please, Matt. So the yellow boxes, and we need to work on the fitting of the words into the boxes when we present. But hey, I told you I wasn't a techie person. We'll be able to detect fail sensors. It will give then the output and the outcome the ability to identify escalations quicker with more reliable data. So if that all happens quicker, what does that then allow? If we get this right, the people that we send out to deploy, to go and find and fix, will know the exact location where it's happening. So it will reduce the time and effort it takes to go around and find stuff. I don't know if you do that when you go and find stuff. That's my finding thing. And then that'll allow just a more improved response to whatever event it is, and then eventually reduce leakage and reduced interruption to supply. But I could talk to you, but it's been a long 2 days, hasn't it, guys? So I want to invite some people up here to demonstrate how this works. Can I have, please, 15 people? Jez, you are one. Up you come. Come on, 15 people. This is the last session of the day. Come on.
Can I get, lads, up you come. Yeah, too right.
Yeah, I will start picking on people. How many we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10 more. Come on.
Keep us here until we get 15.
6, 7, 8, 9, thank you. 10, 11. Let's just go for 2 more. Hughesy, are you in?
Why not?
Right, okay, we'll leave it there. You can all relax. Okay, so there's going to be rules here, but I'll just explain what we're going to do. I'm going to give you, Tony, some data, okay? And you are going to, in the form of a message, and you are going to pass this data and message on down the line to Matt at the end, okay? There are some rules, so you all have to turn and face that way when I tell you to, not right now. And how it's going to work is you're not allowed to peek behind you. So that's one. Rule number 2, no talking whatsoever. You are not allowed to open this. Okay? Right? Those are the only 2 rules. Other than the 3rd one, everyone has to receive and give the message. So you cannot miss anyone out. Understood so far? Right. Okay, so how it's going to work, you're all going to face that way. You're going to get a tap on the shoulder when it's your turn to receive the message. You're going to turn round, receive the message, turn back round, tap the person in front of you, and give the message on. Okay? Understood? Okay, rules start now. Face that way, please. No peeking, Hughesy, at the end. Right, are you ready, Tony? You have to turn around. Right, failed at the first hurdle. When you get the tap on the shoulder, you turn around so you can see the message. Okay, no, it's all right. You went right. I'm going to give the message now. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Matt, what was the message?
I couldn't possibly repeat it.
What was the message?
It was a bit of this.
Okay, so you can see, I'm going to stand here. So we went from a quite coherent message at the start, right? Got distorted. Why did that happen? People. The more times data get handed off between people, the more distorted it gets, or the more distorted the interpretation of that data gets. Okay? If I could have given the message straight to Matt, what would have happened?
Less distortion.
Yeah, less distortion. You would have known exactly what I was talking about. You would have done it, and you would have gone and done stuff. So can you imagine there's a burst, or there's something that's happened there. Is it real or not? We don't know yet. Let's go and investigate. Let's investigate. Oh, something weird happened over here. Don't know. Let's send someone out just to go and find it. We don't really know where it is, but let's go and deploy some people to do stuff. There, got the wiggle, got the bum wiggle. And then at the end, yeah, just a bit of this. Tony, do you want to demonstrate the actual message? Kind of. I'll tell you what, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Go on, Jenny.
Okay, so it was actually, I was just riding a motorbike, essentially. So the data got passed and passed and passed and passed and passed, and it ends up with a little bit of this. Okay, thank you all very much. You can go and sit down. Well done, everybody. So, if we can get more, better, reliable, good quality data at the start to give to the right people quickly at the right time when they need it, you'll be able to do stuff a whole lot quicker, right? Essentially, that's what we're trying to do. Thank you for that, because I know it was a bit silly and a bit stupid, but you did it because you're people and you want to trust me. We want you to be able to trust the data as well. And going back to what you guys said as well, without that trust in the data, without bringing people on the journey, we will never get those outcomes at the top. So my role, under the kind of change experts and transformation people, are trying to do this. But I can't do it for people. You guys are going to have to be working with the data that's provided. So you need to understand it, you need to trust it, and you need to know what it's telling you so you can make better, more informed decisions in the future. Yeah, good. Nods. Going to hand back over to you.
Okay, thank you. So that's pretty much it. We'll just summarise what we've done. That's a very, very quick whistle-stop tour of what is a huge project. We could talk for a day or two about this, but the exciting bit is that it's gone from a conceptual thing into quite a real thing now. In fact, the team are currently all busy beavering away down, well, getting ready for drinks, I should imagine, but actually busy beavering away doing the development aspects of this, discussing how we take it forward. So that's what it's all about, but we do encourage everyone to reach out and get involved. But we are looking at that AI decision engine. That's kind of what's at the heart of it. It creates an opportunity to think about how we manage data, perfectly demonstrated there, because that's going to be what we do. Security was at the foundation of where we started. We've got to rethink how we organise around all of this, but most importantly, water companies have access to what we're doing at all times, so we need that engagement all the way through. And we have to make sure that we work within that theory of change, which shows where all the benefits and outcomes are going to come from. That's the pathway to success for us. So lots going on, lots to think about, and lots of things that we've got untold experts within the team to really get into the detail of. If there's one thing that kind of resonated with you, so like I say, please do get in touch. And there you go. That's all the different ways you can get in touch. Email the team, visit our website where we'll be putting all of our artifacts and learning and things that you can get in touch with the team on. We communicate regularly on LinkedIn, different forums take place, partner events, people involved. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Okay, well done. Thanks ever so much. Right, so let's just take any questions. We've got time for a few questions. Take them from the audience. Could ask them if they want to come up to stand up here again if you want. I've got a question here. With additional data, are there additional costs for data? Do the water utilities have dedicated budget for data storage and processing costs? That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
To which the answer is no, I think. Isn't it?
I think it is. I guess that's a wider remit than probably we're going to answer ourselves. But I guess the principle behind the project is it's learning. So what we'll do is we'll explore all those different areas of data requirements and frequencies and things. Great example earlier about the frequency you guys have got, and understand the kind of trade-off between if you had the maximum available to you, what could you achieve versus the minimum? And ultimately that's then down, I guess, to the individual water company following that path to choose what level of maturity they want to go to on it, right? Because everyone's at different stages, everyone's thinking about this differently. So I think, it comes down to if we can create the framework that allows people to assess and understand where they want to pitch, what they want to go for, what the strategy is going to be, then that's probably about all we can do here.
And you ultimately have to tie it back to the benefit, don't you? You have to tie it back to the business case and the benefit.
That's it.
Okay, any questions from the audience? No? Okay, let's wrap up at that point. Thanks very much. Fantastic. Well done. So, yeah, and do take the team up on the opportunity of taking part in that project, because it's very much an industry project, so there's lots of opportunities there. A final thank you to all of our exhibitor sponsors and supporters: Aqualogic, Burmad, Gutermann, HWM, Muller, Avaro, SEM Water, Suez, Tekura, Technolog and the Water Report. We really appreciate your ongoing support. I think it's been a fantastic day and a half. I mean, just for today, I mean, starting off with Jez, you took us back to Palm, which is great, and you reminded us the importance of reading your Palm, and even brought out CW19 table. Fantastic. I'm going to run off and have a look at that one. And you keep focusing on that point about MEND. 11% of research is on MEND, 52% of the PR24 plans is MEND. So we need to do more on that, there's no doubt. Jennifer, well, blimey, I didn't realise circular leaks, lower sound, split leaks, higher sound, what that can lead to. Nano hardness, I've learnt something new there as well. Edward and Thomas, fantastic. I guess you guys are going to have a very bright future in the water industry. There's an awful lot of work to do there. And cast iron pipes, transients interaction with corrosion, transients and saucer fatigue, blimey, amazing stuff. Richard, when he was talking about what I call, to me it was transient sonar. I can't get that picture of the submarine out of my head, but he called it something far more intelligent than that, inverse transient analysis. And he invited us, actually, didn't he, to put some transients into our networks. And I can understand the initial horror. I was like, hold on to that. But got the point, what an opportunity, and what opportunities we're missing as a result of how we currently think in one dimension about transients. Paul, talking about polyethylene pipes, reminding us also it's not just about technology, but also about the people. And we've got a whole audience there of self-lay pipe layers who are not part of this conversation. And that probably gets us back to the point that Jez is talking about MEND as well. How do we get some different audiences involved in some of this discussion? And Judith and I have already had a conversation about next year and saying we need to find some ways to bring some other groups in here, because we're not having the full discussion here yet. Michael took me back to meter errors, bulk meters, and those horrific experiences I had as a graduate trainee, but really important stuff. Alex, smart meter data, and actually what the modelling opportunities off the back of that, which are enormous, and we've certainly got an angle in our own experience of that, and he's absolutely right to highlight the opportunities for what we can learn from smart metering. Mark reminding us that if you take a lot of the basics around what we already know in DMAs, there's an awful lot you can do and infer from it with decision support. Tim and Richard, well, Tim, you didn't get through 55 slides, but you had a good go. But that sort of environmental impacts on pipes and what we can really learn from an operational point of view and how it can inform strategies and business plans, an awful lot of power there. And you started the drizzle concept, which Tanya and Daniel carried on. Drizzle carried on, we like drizzle. But yeah, again, IDMA just shows you the opportunities for smart networks and how that links in not just strategy, but decision making. And Matt and Jenny, brilliant way to finish. It is the industry's project. It's a great example, actually, of how we can all work together. And I think that's one of the things we've got to continue to say as we move out from here. We do work together really well in this space. As I said right at the beginning, globally, they look at the UK and go, yeah, you're doing a lot of really good stuff here. And sometimes we need to remind ourselves about that, particularly when we're in the crosshairs. So, some of you are off to the Utility Week Awards in London, so that will be about recognising some of the accomplishments of the sector. For those of you who are going, I wish you well. Do enjoy, because there's an awful lot of good stuff going on in this sector, and occasionally it is nice to just step back and look at that and remind ourselves about it. And I do wish you all a very safe trip home, and I hope you've enjoyed the day and a half as much as I have. So thank you all very much. Thank you.